Tonight, federal authorities say a months-long investigation has uncovered an illegal distribution network operating out of this warehouse on the city's west side. Agents moved in before dawn, seizing truckloads of counterfeit goods, firearms, and more than $2 million in cash. 12 people were taken into custody, including the facility's...
That should be clear. Move to C.
Copy. Push up.
Cutting box now. False bottom. We've got bricks.
Market 14 photo.
Sir, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can...
The rain fell in sheets over Seattle that November morning. The kind of cold Pacific Northwest downpour that seemed to seep into your bones no matter how many layers you wore. Special Agent Diana Reeves stood in the command vehicle parked 3 blocks from the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Kent, Washington, watching the massive warehouse through a rain-streaked monitor. The building sprawled across nearly 1 million square feet of industrial real estate, a cathedral of commerce where thousands of workers processed hundreds of thousands of packages every single day. And somewhere inside that building, according to 18 months of investigation, was the man responsible for the largest drug trafficking operation ever conducted through a legitimate American corporation. His name was Trevor Whitfield, and on paper he was exactly what he appeared to be, a 47-year-old senior operations manager who had worked his way up through Amazon's ranks over 12 years, starting as a picker in a Phoenix facility and climbing steadily through the corporate hierarchy until he oversaw logistics for the entire Pacific Northwest region. He had a wife named Catherine, 2 daughters in private school, a colonial house in Bellevue with a 3-car garage, and a reputation among his colleagues as a demanding but fair boss who delivered results quarter after quarter. His employee reviews were exemplary. His performance metrics were consistently in the top 5% nationwide. He attended church on Sundays, coached his younger daughter's soccer team, and donated generously to local charities. None of his neighbors, his colleagues, or even his own family had any idea that Trevor Whitfield had spent the past 7 years building a drug empire worth an estimated $2.8 billion, using Amazon's own logistics network to move cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine to every corner of the United States. Diana Reeves had been chasing this case since it landed on her desk at the FBI's Seattle field office, back when it was nothing more than a statistical anomaly flagged by a DEA analyst with too much time and a talent for pattern recognition. The analyst had noticed something strange in the overdose data coming out of mid-sized cities across America. Towns like Boise, Spokane, Albuquerque, and Omaha were seeing spikes in fentanyl deaths that didn't match the traditional trafficking patterns. The drugs weren't coming from the usual sources, the border crossings and port cities where cartels had established their distribution networks over decades. They were appearing in places that should have been downstream, not upstream, in the supply chain. When the analyst dug deeper, he found something even stranger. The spike cities had one thing in common. They were all served by Amazon fulfillment centers that had opened or expanded within the past 5 years. The correlation could have been coincidental. Amazon was everywhere now, its blue vans as common as mail trucks in American neighborhoods. But the analyst couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking at something significant, and he'd passed his findings up the chain until they reached Diana's desk. She'd been skeptical at first. The idea that someone could use Amazon's infrastructure to traffic drugs seemed almost absurd. The company had sophisticated security systems, package tracking that followed every item from warehouse to doorstep, and a workforce of hundreds of thousands of employees who could potentially notice something wrong. How could anyone move billions of dollars worth of narcotics through such a system without getting caught? The answer, Diana had learned over 18 months of painstaking investigation, was that Trevor Whitfield was a genius. Not the flashy kind of genius that attracted attention, but the quiet, methodical kind that understood systems better than the people who designed them. He had studied Amazon's operations from the inside for years, learning every vulnerability, every blind spot, every assumption that the security protocols were built upon. And then he had exploited them with surgical precision. The scheme was elegantly simple in concept, but fiendishly complex in execution. Whitfield had established relationships with 3 Mexican cartels, the Sinaloa, CJNG, and a smaller organization called Los Guerreros del Norte that specialized in synthetic drugs. He had convinced them to invest in his distribution network by demonstrating something they had never seen before, a way to move product directly to customers without ever touching the traditional trafficking infrastructure that law enforcement had spent decades learning to monitor. The drugs entered the United States through legitimate shipping containers, hidden inside commercial products manufactured in China and Southeast Asia, Bluetooth speakers with hollowed-out battery compartments, yoga mats with cores of compressed fentanyl, children's toys with cocaine packed into there. Electronic components. The products were real, functional items that would pass any customs inspection because they were exactly what their shipping manifests claimed them to be. They were just also something more. These products were sent to Amazon's fulfillment centers as regular inventory from shell companies that Whitfield had established through a web of offshore corporations and domestic LLCs. Once inside the Amazon system, they were stored alongside millions of other products, invisible. Needles in a haystack so large that no one could ever search it completely. And when orders came in from Whitfield's network of distributors, posing as regular Amazon customers, the drugs were picked, packed, and shipped by Amazon employees who had no idea they were participating in the largest drug trafficking operation in American history. The beauty of the system was its banality. Every day Amazon shipped millions of packages across the country. Every day blue vans pulled up to houses in Sion. Every neighborhood, drivers walking packages to doorsteps without a second thought. No one looked twice at an Amazon delivery. No one called the police when a van stopped on their street. The company had spent billions of dollars and years of effort making its presence so ubiquitous that it had become invisible, and Trevor Whitfield had weaponized that invisibility. Diana had built her case piece by piece, working with a small team of agents she trusted absolutely, knowing that any leak could destroy years of work and allow Whitfield to disappear. They had flipped 3 mid-level distributors who had been arrested on state charges and faced decades in prison. They had cultivated a source inside one of the cartel organizations who provided information about shipment schedules and payment structures. They had obtained warrants for financial records that revealed a staggering flow of money, more than $2.8 billion over 7 years, laundered through cryptocurrency exchanges, real estate investments, and a network of cash-intensive businesses that stretched from Seattle to Miami. And they had identified the moment when Trevor Whitfield would be most vulnerable, the morning of November 15th. When he was scheduled to personally oversee a major inventory audit at the Kent Fulfillment Center. He would be on the warehouse floor, surrounded by employees who knew him only as a demanding but respected manager, completely unaware that 50 FBI agents were waiting to take him down. Diana checked her watch. 6:47 a.m. The warehouse had been operational for 2 hours already, the night shift winding down as the day shift arrived. Through the monitor, she could see workers in orange safety vests moving between towering shelves of products, forklifts carrying pallets, conveyor belts snaking through the facility like mechanical arteries. Somewhere in that controlled chaos, Trevor Whitfield was reviewing spreadsheets, checking metrics, playing the role he had perfected over 12 years. Her radio crackled. "All teams, this is command. Target confirmed on site, 3rd floor operations center. We have eyes on. Prepare for entry on my mark." Diana felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded every major operation. After 18 months, it came down to this. All the surveillance, all the interviews, all the sleepless nights spent reviewing financial records and phone intercepts. Everything had led to this rain-soaked morning in a Seattle suburb, to a warehouse that shipped dog food and diapers, and, according to her evidence, enough fentanyl to kill every person in the state of Washington. "Command, this is Team Alpha, in position at the main entrance. Team Bravo at the loading docks. Team Charlie covering the employee parking lot. Team Delta on the roof, thermal showing normal activity patterns." Diana keyed her radio. "All teams, this is lead. Remember, we have several hundred civilian employees in that facility. Our priority is taking Whitfield alive and securing the evidence. No unnecessary risks, no cowboy moves, by the book." She received acknowledgments from all 4 teams and turned to the agent beside her, a young man named Marcus Chen, who had been with her since the beginning of the investigation. He was holding a tablet showing real-time GPS data from Whitfield's company phone and personal vehicle, both of which confirmed he was inside the building. "You ready for this?" she asked. Chen nodded, his jaw tight. 18 months. I've dreamed about this moment. Don't dream, execute. Dreams get people killed. She keyed the radio one final time. "All teams, this is lead. Execute, execute, execute." The next 3 minutes unfolded with the precision of a choreographed dance. Team Alpha entered through the main employee entrance, badges provided by Amazon's corporate security team, which had been briefed just 12 hours earlier under strict secrecy protocols. Team Bravo came through the loading docks, moving past startled workers who stopped their forklifts and backed away from the sight of armed federal agents in tactical gear. Team Charlie secured the parking lot, ensuring no one could flee by vehicle. Team Delta maintained overwatch from the roof, their thermal cameras tracking every person in the facility. Diana moved with Team Alpha, her service weapon drawn but pointed at the floor, her FBI windbreaker marking her as law enforcement to the confused employees they passed. They moved Quickly through the ground floor, past endless rows of shelving units stacked with products, past conveyor belts that continued running even as workers stepped back in confusion, past a break room where a dozen employees had been eating breakfast and now stood frozen with coffee cups in hand. The operations center was on the 3rd floor, accessible by a freight elevator and 2 stairwells. Team Alpha split, one element taking the elevator while Diana led the other up the stairs. She took the steps 2 at a time, her breath steady despite the exertion, her mind focused on the target. The 3rd floor was quieter than the warehouse below. A carpeted office space with cubicles and conference rooms and glass-walled offices for senior managers. Diana emerged from the stairwell and immediately saw him through the glass. Trevor Whitfield, sitting at a desk in the corner office, looking at something on his computer screen, completely unaware of what was about to happen. He was smaller than she expected, maybe 5'8", with thinning brown hair and glasses that gave him the look of an accountant rather than a drug lord. He was wearing a blue Oxford shirt with the sleeves rolled up, Amazon's signature orange safety vest hanging on a hook by his door. A family photo sat on his desk, showing him with his wife and 2 daughters at what looked like a ski resort, everyone smiling, everyone happy, everyone utterly disconnected from the truth of who he was. Diana moved toward the office, her team flanking her, agents spreading out to cover the other employees who were now standing at their desks with expressions of shock and confusion. She reached the door, turned the handle, and stepped inside. Trevor Whitfield looked up from his computer, and Diana watched the moment of recognition cross his face. Not recognition of her specifically, but recognition of what was happening, of what this meant, of the fact that his carefully constructed double life was ending in this moment. She saw him glance toward his desk drawer, saw his hand twitch slightly, and she raised her weapon. "Don't," she said, her voice calm and cold. "FBI, you're under arrest. Put your hands on the desk where I can see them." For a long moment, Whitfield didn't move. His eyes darted around the room, calculating, evaluating, searching for options that didn't exist. Diana could almost see the thoughts racing through his mind, the desperate search for an escape route, the gradual realization that there was none. Then something shifted in his expression. The tension drained from his shoulders. His hands moved slowly to the desktop, palms down, fingers spread. And he smiled. A small, rueful smile that chilled Diana more than any display of anger would have. "Special Agent Diana Reeves," he said, his voice mild and conversational. "I've been wondering when you'd show up." Diana felt a shock of recognition. He knew her name. He had been watching her, even as she watched him. The thought made her skin crawl. "You know who I am," she said, keeping her weapon trained on him. "I know everything, Agent Reeves. That's how I've survived this long. I knew about your investigation 6 months ago. I knew about your informants. I knew about the distributors you flipped." His smile widened slightly. "I just didn't think you'd actually get this far. I underestimated you. That doesn't happen often." Diana gestured to the agents behind her. "Cuff him. Read him his rights." As 2 agents moved forward, Whitfield continued talking, his voice still eerily calm. "You know what the funny thing is? I was going to retire next year. 1 more year and I would have disappeared. New identity, new country, new life. I had it all planned out. But I got greedy. I always told the cartels that greed was the enemy, that patience was the key. And then I made the same mistake myself." The agents pulled his hands behind his back and secured them with zip ties. Diana holstered her weapon and moved around the desk to look at his computer screen. It showed a logistics dashboard, tracking thousands of packages moving through the system. Somewhere in that data, she knew, was evidence of the drugs that had killed thousands of people. Evidence that would help her put this man away for the rest of his life. "You have the right to remain silent," one of the agents was saying, reciting the familiar words. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Whitfield ignored him, keeping his eyes fixed on Diana. "You think you've won, Agent Reeves. You think this is over. But you have no idea what you've stepped into. The cartels aren't going to let this go. They've invested billions in this network. They're not going to watch it disappear without a response. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I'm a businessman, Agent Reeves. I don't make threats. I analyze situations and predict outcomes. And I'm telling you as a professional courtesy that you should watch your back. The people I work with don't accept failure. They don't forgive. And they don't forget." Diana leaned in close enough to smell his cologne, close enough to see the tiny beads of sweat on his forehead that betrayed the fear behind his calm facade. "Neither do I," she said quietly. "Take him." They led Trevor Whitfield out of his office in handcuffs, past the stunned employees who had worked alongside him for years without knowing the truth, down through the warehouse where hundreds of workers had stopped to watch the spectacle of their boss being arrested by federal agents. The rain had intensified outside, hammering against the loading dock's metal roof like applause. Diana stood at the edge of the dock, watching as they loaded Whitfield into an unmarked SUV. Behind her, forensic teams were already swarming the facility, seizing computers and phones and files, beginning the painstaking process of documenting the evidence that would build the case. It would take months, maybe years, to fully unravel the network Whitfield had built. But they had the man himself. And that was the beginning of the end. Her phone buzzed with a text from the Seattle SAC. "Nice work. Press conference scheduled for 2 p.m. Prepare a statement." Diana stared at the message for a long moment, thinking about everything that had led to this point. The overdose victims whose deaths had first flagged the pattern. The families destroyed by addiction. The DEA analyst who had trusted his instincts. The informants who had risked their lives to provide information. The team of agents who had spent 18 months building this case while balancing their own families and lives. She thought about Trevor Whitfield's warning, about the cartels and their inevitable response. She knew he was right. This arrest would send shockwaves through the criminal underworld, would threaten billions of dollars in invested infrastructure, would demand retribution from organizations that had built their power on violence and fear. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, she had won. Today, justice had been served. Today, a man who had used America's most trusted company to poison its people would begin paying for his crimes. The rain continued to fall, washing down the sides of the warehouse, pooling in the parking lot, running toward the drains. Diana turned back to the building, where the work of dismantling an empire was just beginning. The forensic examination of the Kent facility took 3 weeks. What they found exceeded even Diana's worst estimates. Hidden among the millions of products in the warehouse were more than 400 kilograms of fentanyl, 200 kilograms of cocaine, and 150 kilograms of methamphetamine, all concealed within seemingly innocent consumer products. The fentanyl alone was enough to deliver fatal doses to every person in the Pacific Northwest several times over. But the drugs were only part of the story. The digital forensics revealed an operation of staggering sophistication. Whitfield had created a shadow logistics system within Amazon's own infrastructure, using his access to manipulate inventory records, shipping manifests, and tracking data. He had established a network of more than 3,000 customer accounts that served as distribution points, each one carefully managed to avoid triggering Amazon's fraud detection systems. He had developed algorithms that predicted when and where law enforcement was most likely to be watching, routing shipments around surveillance operations with uncanny precision. The financial investigation was equally revealing. Whitfield had laundered the cartel's money through a labyrinth of shell companies, cryptocurrency wallets, and legitimate businesses. He owned, through various intermediaries, a chain of car washes in Arizona, 3 hotels in Florida, a construction company in Texas, and a portfolio of rental properties scattered across 12 states. The total value of his assets exceeded $400 million. All of it ultimately derived from the drug trade. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was the scope of the human toll. By cross-referencing Whitfield's shipment records with overdose data from the CDC, analysts estimated that drugs distributed through his network had been directly responsible for more than 12,000 deaths over 7 years. 12,000 people in cities and towns